Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hello, leader. Welcome back to episode 110 of the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm, and you, my friend, are in for a treat today. This week, I wanted to switch things up a bit and share a little insight and inspiration with you from a modern day business case study that will, no question, empower you to keep going when you're feeling in a rut or doubting yourself, your vision, or your tenacity to endure the failures. One current hot topic among aesthetic providers is, how do I prepare my business to be attractive to a buyer? And most of the time, our clients start their businesses with literally no thought of their end game. They're following their passion, living out their mission, making a transformative impact on their patients. But at some point, usually when they begin to feel completely overwhelmed, they start to brainstorm possible ways to make money without working more, or they may be thinking about retirement, and they start to think about what would happen when they exit their business. And you might be one of these women I'm referring to. You are feeling the pressures of your business, thinking about how much blood, sweat, and tears you're putting into every day of the grind, and wondering to yourself what this will all be worth at the end. One of our CTS clients recently received a random offer on her business. She had never even considered that selling it was a near-term possibility. She was looking into expansion of her own location and eventually building out in different cities. And this random offer really made her head spin. And I get it. First off, she should be flattered that she's created something out of thin air that's attractive to someone else. But also, there was a lot of questions that she had, questions about the value of her business and if she even wanted to sell. And as we work with hundreds of high-growth female entrepreneurs across the globe year over year, I can tell you that this predicament is not unique to this client. How do I scale to sell? In fact, I was recently asked to prepare a workshop I'll be presenting at Aesthetic Next in Dallas in September, teaching on this very topic. P.S. If you're going to be there, send me a DM and let me know so we can meet up. The bottom line is, as a founder, you are in the driver's seat when it comes to an acquisition of your business. And this process really starts now with getting clear on your goals. The process of selling your business really happens in 3 distinct stages. Number 1, define what your end game looks like. How do you picture your lifestyle? What is the legacy you want to leave behind? What does that exit mean for you? Number 2, build a beautiful business that fills a gap in the market, has a clear vision, and is run like a well-oiled machine. And number 3, find a buyer who aligns with your goals and negotiate a lucrative deal, selling your business for a multiple of what it's worth. So much of the time, founders skip to step number 3 and end up selling their business for significantly less than it could be worth, or handing their power over to someone else before they have put the real work in to make sure their business is optimized for sale. Or they sell their business because they've fallen out of love with their business and just need out. And that's where we come in. We help female business owners create a clear position in the marketplace and build their internal infrastructure to make sure that their business is juicy and primed for not only lucrative income from profits year after year, but also a systemic and consistent cash flow model that can be replicated by an investor. P.S. This can all happen while you show up energized and empowered in your business every single day. And in order to do that, it takes evolving as a human. I truly believe that entrepreneurship is the number one lesson in personal development that a person can experience. It exposes your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, your weaknesses, your Achilles heel. We had a call recently with a prospective client who had a crippling fear over failing in her business because she had watched her father's business crumble years and years prior to starting hers. And we worked with a client a while back who couldn't keep an employee around because she had severe issues with trust. And once she started to get too close to someone, she manufactured a reason to let them go. So many of us have a limit to our level of resilience for setbacks and ultimately give up on that big dream, sometimes just a few steps before achieving it. And this work is so important. We often want to be spoon-fed answers or think skipping ahead to grow our business faster is the solution. But instead, for a service-based female founder who is doing transformational work, the growth needs to happen within. When I talk about emotional growth for business owners, I'm seeing eye rolls right now across the microphone. I get it. We're all hustling and enduring tremendous pressure to cover our overhead, make our payroll, and at best pay ourselves a salary. The numbers do matter. But what I want to share with you today is a story that resonates so deeply with me and my philosophy around growth. It's counterintuitive and it's controversial because for most people, business is about math. But for me, it's about the experience of growth. It's about setting out to accomplish something amazing and learning who you are in the process. And the numbers will show us if we're on the right track. But they are subjective in the end. A business that makes $1 million but is hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with an overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated owner, that isn't much of a business to me. But a business bringing in $500,000 a year with $250,000 in profits and a well-rested, energized, fulfilled owner is a recipe primed for success and a model that's scalable. Now that's sexy. And it's the soft skills, the fluffy stuff that gets you there. It's leadership, it's building the right team and tapping into creativity that allows you to listen to your inner voice and show up authentically in the marketplace. And it's this same focus on the intangibles that built the empire that has become the case study I want to share with you today. The $1.2 billion sale of IT Cosmetics to L'Oreal in 2016 under the leadership of Jamie Kern Lima. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, you'll never become a $1.2 billion business owner, but neither did Jamie. And what I hope you'll take away from this today is the understanding that if focusing on core values and translating those values into the people you employ can be done by an organization employing 1,000 human beings, it can certainly be done by you. And if you want to build a business that is worth its stress, that gets a return on its headaches, there is no other way to go about it. Your brand, it starts inside. First, by addressing a gap in the marketplace, and then by living out your vision through every single decision you make, top to bottom. If you don't know Jamie Kern Lima's story, you're in for a treat. And believe me, you won't forget it after today. A recent Forbes article shares a little bit of her story. Jamie was a news anchor in LA back in 2008. She started work most nights at midnight, and most days she really stressed out her skin, and she had a hereditary rosacea that would flare up. And foundation, the makeup she's putting on, made her condition look worse, not better. And so she got fed up. She started thinking about how she could really address this problem. And she started thinking up new formulations and technologies to help people with flawed, sensitive skin. So she really commissioned skin experts to help her create this new product. And she literally cold called beauty companies to find manufacturers. She heard no after no after no until she finally found someone who would develop her product. She pitched distributors, again, no after no after no. And then she attempted to go direct to consumer at QVC multiple times, who, again, told her no after no after no. They weren't interested. She was even told that no one would want to buy cosmetic products from a curvy girl her size. QVC finally agreed 2 years later after she was told she could use perfect models instead of real women on their stage. Contrary to professional advice, she decided to show up on QVC and show her own flawed skin. and to show real women what real women look like. And she nailed it. And she shocked investors and they began calling. And she became very tempted, especially as a poor entrepreneur like she was, to just jump on board and take any investor that came to her. I mean, she was really just hoping for someone to help her grow her infrastructure. But she waited, she did her due diligence, and she called every entrepreneur and CEO she knew who had previously worked with these investors. And all of this hard work paid off. Eventually, Jamie landed a deal with L'Oreal and she sold her company for $1.2 billion. And today I want to share with you a clip from a recent Entreleadership podcast. So you can hear her share her own story of resilience. You can hear how a now multimillionaire speaks about how a focus on her core values, on the intrinsic brand, on the team, and enrolling her team into the bigger vision was really the key to her success. Let's have a listen.
So in 2019, you stepped down as CEO of IT Cosmetics and you sold it famously to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion back in 2016. But your story, it doesn't start there. It started way back. Take us back to when you were bagging groceries and waiting tables at Denny's. In the middle of this entrepreneurial journey, you faced what you call some crazy, painful rejection along the way. Tell us what that was like.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. Thank you. Because a lot of people just see the end result. They're like, oh, Denny's waitress builds $1 billion company. And it seems like, oh, did she get lucky or something like that? And, the real journey, the real story behind the story is years and years and years of, not just 100-hour weeks, but hundreds of rejections and rejection after rejection after rejection. And many, many years where I literally, George, I didn't know, are we going to go bankrupt at any moment? And are we going to make it? And, when I look back at the journey, I had this sort of big dream. It started with a problem of my own I was trying to solve, which was I have a skin condition called rosacea. Couldn't find anything else out there to work that would work for me. And I didn't know anything about this industry that I was about to enter. I didn't have any connections in the beauty world and I didn't have any money, but God put this dream on my heart and I couldn't shake it. And I was working as a news anchor and I just kept getting this feeling, that still small voice, right? That we all get. And I just felt like, oh gosh, I've got to listen to this. And I felt it in my soul, but my head talked me out of it for a long time where I was like, oh, but you're not qualified. You don't, what if you lose every penny you have, like all those things. But I eventually just decided to trust it. And on my honeymoon flight to South Africa, wrote the business plan with my husband, came back. We both quit our jobs and sort of dove all in. And from the moment we launched this little business with this big dream in our living room, we poured every penny we had into the product. And I just thought, George, okay, if we make a product that actually works, it's just going to sell. If it's that good, it's just going to sell. And maybe other entrepreneurs listening can relate to this, but I did not know what I did not know. And from that day forward, it would be over 3 years before we could afford to pay ourselves at all.
Wow.
And all of these sort of retailers I put up on pedestals that I used to spend my Denny's tip money, shopping in their stores, the big beauty stores, the big department stores. When I'd send them the product, every single one of them said no. And it was hundreds of no's. And I had a dream of going on QVC and they said no for years. And I had one potential investor that I thought was going to actually save our company. And he said no. And this was years in, because he didn't think that women would buy makeup from someone who looked like me with my body and weight. So it was no's for so many reasons. But in that journey, I just kept having this feeling that I couldn't shake. And I think what happens, George, is so many people, we have no proof as entrepreneurs. We often go through these seasons where we have no proof around us that we're right, or that there's a demand for our product, or that our idea is and our gut feeling is right when everything's going wrong. And we give up and we quit. And sometimes it's after one no or 10 no's or 20 no's. And building this company, and we built to over 1,000 employees and eventually the largest luxury makeup company in the country. But in the journey, I did a lot of things wrong. And when I look back, one of the things I did right was every time I got another no and another rejection and another sort of blow and another, you don't have what it takes or you're not the right fit, they were painful. And there was times I cried myself to sleep and my family would be like, you haven't paid yourself in 3 years? Like nothing? Like, did you really quit your job to do this? Like you have everyone else's doubt getting so loud. But when I'd pray about it and get still, I just had this knowing, this feeling I was supposed to keep going. And I think listening to that still small voice, which we all have the ability to access. I think when we do that, it can not just change our business and our journey as entrepreneurs, but it can change our entire life. So Our real story is a story about overcoming rejection and listening to that knowing over all the no's happening all around me.
Wow, it's an incredible story. And you unpack it in your book, Believe It, How to Go from Underestimated to Unstoppable. And that's exactly what you've done. And it's such an incredible story because it's all of us as entrepreneurs out there where you go, I'm just crazy enough to think this will work. And ignorance is bliss because I don't know what I don't know. And therefore, I'm willing to charge hell with a water pistol to make this happen. Would you credit that still small voice for carrying you through those really hard moments? Because most entrepreneurs, if they do it for the wrong reasons, they give up. Right? When the money's not coming in and it's not a lightning in a bottle thing. But when you do it for the right reasons because this is your calling, it changes everything, it seems.
Yes. And I think it's so key that you really tune into your calling and that you really peel back the layers on it. Make sure you're going deep enough to, we hear so many people talk about your why. But I think so many entrepreneurs, like I've now had the blessing of meeting tens of thousands of them. I mean, just in the QVC green room alone, I did over 1,000 live shows myself. And you meet so many brand founders coming in and taking their shot on air in every different industry. And, very few make it. Very, very few make it. And I think that one of the things I see happen a lot is people kind of have their why identified and it sounds good to other people. So they stop there. But they actually never go deep enough to make it so personal to them and to make it so much bigger than themselves that it becomes like a tool in your resiliency toolbox. So the times it is tough, you can lean on them, right? So for me, yes, definitely the still small voice. And I would get still and pray and I would trust that. And that's probably the biggest tool in my toolbox. But another one is just that. It's, really identifying your why. And we hear that a lot. And people do it wrong. And what I mean by that is, here's an example, is I had this skin condition. So I could have said, well, my why is to just create products that help people like me and people that have given up on makeup or whatever it might be. And if I shared that why with someone else, I just want to help so many people, it would sound really good. And I would get congratulated for it. Like, oh, that's great. But one of the things I did early on, and this was out of sheer grace, I didn't even know the power of this yet, but I identified something so deep. What I realized, I couldn't find any products that worked for me. I realized also, George, like my whole life, even as a little girl, I would see these beauty ads on television and in magazines, and I loved them and I aspired to look like them. But they always kind of made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I realized when I'm sitting there anchoring the news with this skin condition and I can't find anything that works for me, and I'm like, I don't understand. There's hundreds, thousands of companies. Why does nothing work for me? Then I realized I've never seen a model with bright red rosacea on her face saying, try this makeup. And what I realized was like, wow, in this moment, I realized this calling that was so deep, a why that was so deep. I realized I don't just want to launch a product and one that works, that's really good, that helps people. Like, what if, and this was a God-sized dream for someone sitting there with no money and no worldly qualifications. But I sat there and had this God-sized dream moment where I was like, what if, I'll launch these products, but what if I can actually put real people as models, like all ages, shapes, sizes, skin tones, skin challenges? And what if I can call them beautiful as models and mean it? And what if I can shift actual culture in the beauty industry in terms of the definition of beauty for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself and every grown woman who still does. So it was like this deep, painful why that felt personal to me, but it felt bigger than myself. And what happened, George, and this is so important because so many entrepreneurs, they stop at the why that everyone claps for. But what I realized was this was so meaningful to me that on those, days and weeks and months and years where it was constant rejection and I didn't know how we were going to make it, like I knew that why was so much bigger than the rejection I just got. And what happened is as we built the team, we brought on eventually over 1,000 employees, that why was so personal to them as well in their own way. So we assembled this team of people that believed in something so much greater than themselves. And it helped us with employee retention. It helped us with hiring because we had people leave much larger companies and take actual lower salaries because they weren't fulfilled where they were and they didn't feel like what they were doing mattered. And they would hop on board with us because they believed in the vision and the vision was authentic. And so it helped with all of that. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, that is one thing that's overlooked often, and it's free. Because like in the beginning, a lot of us don't have money to hire anyone anyway. and then it's hard making payroll as we're scaling. And I feel like this is one tool that not only personally as an entrepreneur is so important to have in your toolbox, but also as you're building and scaling a team. You can read business books all day long, and often they don't teach you how to do this part, and it's free, and it's so powerful because at the end of the day, I could not have built, sold, and we were acquired by L'Oreal for $1.2 billion cash. And then in the first 2 years post-acquisition, we doubled the size of the business. And I credit that to my team. They're amazing, not just because they're really smart, which they are, but their why was deep. Like they were on a mission that they believed in so powerfully. And that part is free and that part is beautiful. And that part is so, so, so important when it comes to, every entrepreneur, even if their team is just them right now, it's so important. There was a big moment where I learned one of the most powerful lessons as it pertains to authenticity. And it was also the same moment where I realized, oh my gosh, the momentum is shifting. And maybe, just maybe, that still small voice is right. Like I keep listening to it and I keep getting no proof around me. And it's years and so it was this moment where after 3 years of hearing no, we got one shot on QVC, which is, QVC is a live television channel. In the US, they're broadcast to 100 million homes. And I found out, George, that we got one shot and this 10-minute window to either hit their sales goal or not come back. Now, at the time, we were selling 2 to 3 orders a day out of our website, out of our office, which was our living room, packing boxes, driving to the post office, getting them out every day, and just trying to stay alive. And this was a couple of years in, and I learned we would have to hit the QVC sales goal, we would have to sell over 6,000 units of our product in a 10-minute window, which was a few $100,000 of product. And I also learned the offer was consignment. So your whole team and everything that Ramsey stands for would say, do not take this because and by the way, no entrepreneur should take a purchase order they can't afford to lose. And at this point, it was a consignment offer, which meant we had to somehow pay for, manufacture, ship in over 6,000 units of product. And then we weren't paid for it unless we were just going to be paid for whatever sold in that 10-minute window. And whatever didn't sell, we'd have to take back. And so normally you should never do this. And at this point, we were sort of like, do that or go out of business because we had no money left. And we applied for SBA loans and the 23rd bank said yes, which was in California Bank and Trust. And they gave us a SBA loan to cover just the amount of inventory for this one shot on QVC. Wow. So everything was on the line. We hired third-party consultants that are awesome and they help a lot of people. They teach you like how to sell your products in stores or how to present and produce your 10-minute spot on air. And here's the problem is every single one of them, and they're awesome and they wanted me to win, but they told me the same thing. They said, if you want a shot at actually hitting these numbers, which is so hard to do, very few people do it on QVC. If you want a shot, here's what you need to do. You need to use this type of model to show your product, which was women with perfect skin, no one that looked like me with bright red rosacea. And I said to them, okay, I get that's how it's always been done, but that's not authentic. Like to me, my authentic why I want to take my makeup off on national television, show my bright red rosacea and prove the product works. And I would tell them, what if I put, women in their 70s and 80s and models of all ages and skin tones and maybe some who have acne and all the things. And they were mortified at this idea. And so they were like, listen, we're giving you the best advice that we have. And here's what you need to do. So I flew out to QVC a week early. And I sat in this parking lot, staring at their front door in my car, in a rental car, an economy rental car, which I could barely afford. And I sat there praying and crying for a week because I knew in my gut what the right thing to do was. But then I was like, but I don't want to go bankrupt. And I kept having self-doubt and thoughts well, what if I try it their way and then make some money and then I try it my way? I had all these thoughts and I had this moment in the car, in that rental car. And I knew this lesson. And I made the decision to live it out. But this idea that while authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success, inauthenticity guarantees failure. I knew that, and I'd seen it play out in company after company after company when they start getting distracted from their true authentic mission and who their customers truly are. So I sat there kind of knowing that. I imagined who our customers were. I imagined a single woman in Nebraska, for whatever reason, folding laundry and was way too busy to remember she mattered and that she was beautiful. And I had this moment in the car where I realized if she turns on her television, sees me on there, blesses me with 5 seconds of her time, I'd rather have her see me showing women that look like her and calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather do that than sell a whole bunch of product and stand for nothing. And so I went in there live for the show. The 10-minute clock was on the floor. You know how studios are set up, right? There was the cameras, there was this 10-minute clock. And I then learned, George, that I'm not even guaranteed the 10 minutes. If I'm a minute or two into the live presentation selling and I'm not hitting numbers, you get your time cut. It'll go from you think you have 8 minutes left, boom, you have 1 minute left.
No
and
pressure.
You're oh no, because you can do the math in your head of how much money you just lost. And anyhow, we went live and the clock started and I was freaking out, to be honest, and shaking like a leaf and all the things, not because I was worried about TV. I felt like the weight of the whole business was in that moment. And I remember the moment my bright red bare face rosacea came up on national television, and I went over to models, all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges. And we had about a minute left in the presentation. And I didn't know the numbers, but I knew I wasn't cut yet. So I thought that was good. And then we had about a minute, or actually a couple of seconds left when they said, the host says, the deep shade's almost gone, the tan shade's almost sold out. And then it was, it was right at the 10-minute mark, this giant sold out sign that I had prayed about, envisioned. This giant sold out sign came up across the screen. I started crying on national television, and my husband, they cut from me and went to Dyson vacuum or something like that. And my husband came rushing through the double doors, and I was crying, and I'm real women have spoken. And he's we're not going bankrupt. And that one airing turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year, and then eventually 250 live shows a year on QVC. So we built the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And it is actually right now at this moment. And I share that because, and I think this is so important for anyone in a season of setback that feels like setback or things aren't going their way in their business. But it was 3 years of QVC not only saying no, but you're not the right fit for us or our customers. And sometimes we hear those rejections or those painful no's, or we put a big launch out in the world and 5 people buy it. And we think, oh, but I wanted 100 people to buy it. And maybe I don't have what it takes. And I just think, the whole journey of getting still and hearing that still small voice and trusting it and really looking and changing your relationship with rejection. I am not afraid of rejection at all. And I've built a resiliency toward rejection that has changed my entire life. And I think that that's really important. When rejection happens to me, even to this day, George, even it happens to us all the time, right? It could be in the form of oh, you're not invited to coffee with that group of friends, or, oh, rejection comes in so many forms. And I really, I pray about it, and I look at rejection as God's protection. And there's so many ways it has been. The investor I mentioned to you who said women won't buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight, who I thought was going to be my, saving grace at the time. 6 years later, when we sold to L'Oreal, I heard from him for the first time in 6 years. And he said, congratulations, I was wrong. And I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history.
Wow.
But also what's crazy is I was so desperate at the time when I wanted him to invest. I probably would have given away so much of the company for nothing. And because he didn't believe in me then, 6 years later, when we sold to L'Oreal, we were still the largest shareholders of the whole company. So I was like, rejection is God's protection. Like sometimes it doesn't make sense at the time and we think it's unfair and it's hurtful. But I feel like when we keep that perspective, it gives us a resiliency as well that becomes another tool in our toolbox to keep going and actually compete with the potential of who we're called to be. And I think that is so important.
So leader, there you have it. Such an incredible story that truly gives me chills. Every single no Jamie experienced, she used as a trigger moment to reflect, to go deep inside, and to listen to her own voice. And no, it wasn't easy. She uses the phrase, rejection is protection. And she talks about going deeper on your why. And Goddess, that's what you are capable of. What is your God-sized dream? The dream that is bigger than yourself. For Jamie, it wasn't about the makeup, but she opened up to the possibility that she could change the definition of beauty. And what really stood out to me was her leadership. Her vision was so clear, so articulate, that she had employees who were leaving their companies to come for a smaller salary because they were so behind the mission. Leader, it's time to build your own resiliency toolbox. What and who do you need on your team to help you access your authentic self? Who can you turn to get support? Who is there to uplift you, to share in your successes, and to help you through your adversities? Your level of reward will be directly related to your level of risk-taking. And we see this all the time at KLC. Women taking chances on themselves to come work with a partner who sees them, who sees their vision, who knows without a shadow of a doubt that they are capable of achieving this kind of greatness. That is what it's all about. Remember, no business book is going to teach you these lessons of fierceness like Jamie Kern Lima, but I will. I see you, Goddess. I hope you've enjoyed this case study of the inner workings of a billion-dollar brand. You're next. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Wait, before you go, hey, if you're vibing with this conversation and you want to join me on my mission to help 100 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year, or leader, maybe you want to become one of them, head over to Facebook and join our free community, the Fierce Factor Society. Over there, we're taking this conversation to an elevated level. Get access to resource guides, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me, my expert team, and of course, a society of fierce women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetic wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to Facebook and search the Fierce Factor Society. See you there, Goddess.